Greetings and welcome to another edition of the most powerful platform for truth, bar none, anywhere on God's green earth. This is your platform for education, elevation, and edification. This is the Red Pill Diaries, and I'm your host, your brother, and your friend, Rashid. And I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining me and giving me another hour of your day and another day of your time, because you did not have to do this. So, thank you to each and every one of you who are watching, who will be watching, who likes, who shares, who becomes a subscriber or a member, or you can join our Patreon or anything like that. Join all of our platforms. You can check out the description and the link. Thank you so much, everybody. I really, really appreciate this. But let's go into the news. I mean, there's so many things. Now, everybody, I want to say this to you all. I purposely did not do live streams for a specific reason. I wanted to see the reaction of everybody, all of the platforms, when it came to the news that broke. I wanted to see what the analysis would be, and what would the line of thinking be for these shows and everything like this. Now, one thing we know for sure, and we'll discuss some other stuff, but I watched Putin's inauguration. It happened like in my nighttime, late at night. I believe about 3 o'clock, sometime our time, and it was like raining. So one thing they cannot say is that Putin is sick or is in bad health. Did you see how many stairs this guy had to walk down and up and around? Did you see? I mean, this guy was constantly walking, and I mean a long way. So that dispels the rumors about his health. You know, the West likes to put these rumors out. So watching his inauguration and listening to what he was saying, because some of it had the English translation to it, and I actually went up on his inauguration by mistake. I got a alert to something else, and it led me eventually to that before it started. I want to go into something. Okay, there was an article that came out on the 7th. Today's the 9th, so that was 2 days ago. And it was in Sputnik News, right? Now, this article is titled, "A Shot Across the Bow. Moscow would not allow NATO attacks on Russian civilians." I listened to all of the pundits and all of the prognosticators and all of the thinkers on alternative news. And they were talking about how Putin called the bluff of the Western bully. And Putin proved that Russia is still a viable nuclear power whose interests must be listened to. Well, isn't that what I've been telling you guys for the longest? If he does not tell these people where he stands, and I'm talking about more so his adversaries, where he stands, and if you do this, and this will be the consequences. If you do not do that, you open up a can of worms that is not necessary to be opened, because you're giving this bully a false sense of security. Every time he walks forward, you walk back. Every time he throws a punch, you duck and parry and move to the right. You haven't thrown any punches back, and so the bully is getting amped up. So he's getting a little bit more belligerent. He's following you faster. He's throwing more heavier punches, right? Now, when you stand your ground and you say, listen, you don't want to do this, because if you do this, we're going to take it there. Now, when he authorized the nuke drills, right, and he had to snap drills and had them having them in Belarus and all of that stuff like that, this was him standing his ground. This was him saying to the West, these are the red lines. Forget what everybody else is saying about red lines. You're going to hear it from the horse's mouth. I have just been given a new term, and I'm supposed to represent those people, those 80% of the population that voted me in. 80+%, I believe it is now, that voted me in. I have a mandate to do what I think is best for my nation. And so with this mandate, I'm not going to let it go to waste. Now, after the elections, I can be more firm with you, and I can tell you, this is my red line here. if you overstep this, this will be the consequences. This is one over here. If you overstep that, if you become belligerent, if you ignore my red lines, this will follow, and so on and so on. This is the thing that Russia had not been doing. They had not been doing. The U.S. and the U.K. and France and Germany and all of these nations of the members of the terrorist organization called NATO, they were carrying out covert pick and hit operations, prick hits and stuff all across Russian territory, trying to sabotage its infrastructure, trying to pry to see if they can look up and hit a strategic air base or missile base or just a military base in general on Russia's land. And the reason that the West continued to escalate is because the little hints that were being dropped by officials in Russia were too obscure. So when Milley said that the United States no longer feared escalation, Russian escalation, that was because of that. Because they were speaking on one end and doing something else, speaking on one end and doing something else. The best way to get the bully's attention is to stand your ground. At first, try to reason to avoid conflict. When reasoning does not work, then you issue an ultimatum. Either this happens or this action will follow. That's what Russia did. I've been saying that over and over and over again. And I was looked at like a aggressive channel and an aggressive host. No, I was dealing with reality. Did it not bag the West off of it? If but for a moment, did it not bag them off of him? The proof is in the pudding. Nobody told me this. This was common sense. All right, let's go into this article real quick. I see you in the chat. Thank you all for joining me in the chat also. I'll go to the chat shortly, okay? So continue to get it down in the chat. The article is called A Shot Across the Bow. Moscow will not allow NATO attacks on Russian civilians. First of all, that should have been from the jump. If my citizens aren't off limit, yours aren't. Yours are no better than mine. Well, we shouldn't target civilians. Okay, but you're targeting ours. You're telling me that I can't target your civilian because you're acting a savage over here and you're targeting mine? And I'm supposed to be the stand-up guy and just allow you to kill mine without any repercussions on your end? Man, stop this. Any rational thinker, any sane person would not even try to quantify that crazy equation. You know? So let's go further. In the article written by John Miles, who may be on the platform soon, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken. I got to look at the little calendar and stuff. But anyway, rumors abound that France and the United Kingdom will escalate involvement in Ukraine's proxy war on Russia. The Kremlin has warned of significant consequences. What is with this first introduction statement? You know, when people are trying to convey something and they really want you to pay attention, there's either a sentence before the article really starts or there is a statement in the article before the article becomes really the article, okay? I learned that long ago, but let's look at this again. Rumors abound that France and the United Kingdom will escalate involvement in the Ukraine's proxy war on Russia. Where are these rumors coming from? The belligerent statements of Western officials and Western pundits. And it has grounding in their connections with the hostile states of the West. So when these belligerent statements are abound across global news, there's a little legitimacy to them when they're tied to people who are tied to government institutions and think tanks. So we've been looking at that. And who has been some of the most belligerent ones? The British. About, yes, Ukraine should be able to strike Russian territory. Even after saying when they first started, we have no intentions of allowing Ukraine to use British weapons to strike Russia proper. That would be an escalation unheard of, right? And today, sure, we put no limitation on Ukraine. They should be able to use the Storm Shadow missile to strike deep into Russian territory, right? The belligerent statements, okay? Then you have Macron he has no real military power, right? He only picks on his former colonies because he feels that he can get away with it, but the colonies are starting to stand up. The colonies, the former colonies in Africa and in Asia are starting to rattle and challenge French dominion over their territory, over their resources, and over their lives, right? So, Russia and China are displacing the colonial West in what Joseph Borrell said is our Africa. Isn't that what Joseph Borrell said when describing Europe's relationship to Africa? Not that they are our brothers, our colleagues, our equals, our family. Those were not phrases or words used by the foreign policy chief of the European Union, Joseph Borrell. He says, our Africa. He told Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of the Russian Federation, get out and stay out of our Africa. Our, when he's talking about Africa, shows dominion or ownership of. So they're still thinking with the colonial mind. And Macron being outraged because France is no longer considered by the global South as a true global power. Its military is inadequate, and the only thing that puts it on the stage as a global power, two things, because it's a part of the colonial West and because of its nuclear arsenal. That's it. There are no great thinkers coming out of France anymore. I wonder why. So these rumors that are abound have some legitimacy in them on the aggression and the intended aggression of Western nations against the Russian Federation. Okay? Let's go into this a little bit. All right? So, and bear with me because we're talking about the news. All right? And we're going to address these things the way they should be addressed, and we're going to give you the full view of it, okay? By God's grace. Because everything we do is by God's mercy and his grace. Can't do anything without him. I can of myself do nothing, or whatsoever he will that I do, okay? So listen. More than a month out from a horrific terrorist attack outside Moscow, officials have made clear they will not allow civilian life to be threatened on Russian soil. Now here, stop right there. With this statement, Russia started nuclear drills. And then Belarus followed suit on because, you know, Belarus or Belarus in the West and Russia are also a union state. Even though they're two separate nations, they come together economically, politically, culturally, and militarily. They are a union state, okay? So you cannot look at one without looking at the other because they're so intertwined and tied together through heredity, through genetics and everything else, through culture, genetics, through language, through region. They're tied, okay? So here's the kicker. With the statement and with the moves that the Russian Federation, along with its partner, Belarus, and they're conducting war games and simulating nuclear strikes, tactical nuclear strikes, and non-tactical strikes on an aggressive, unhinged adversary that is seeking to dominate. I wonder who those people are, right? Anyway, Russia, outside of doing that, guess what they've done? They have once again allowed Belgorod and other regions nearing Ukraine to be struck by drones and some say missiles. But from what I heard, is this latest attack was not successful, and the injuries came from falling debris from the knocked out drones and missiles that were fired. Now, that was a red line. Listen to this good, because this draws into that red line, and what America and Britain and the rest of them are doing by allowing and guiding these strikes. Because remember, Ukraine has no technology anymore to guide these strikes into these civilian areas. They are working on these strikes, and they are filtered through U.S., British, Israeli, French, and NATO intelligence. The eyes and ears is NATO. The person who is guiding the attack is a NATO officer. The ones who are supplying the weapons are NATO officers. And pretty much, even though they have a Ukrainian front, the ones who are pulling the triggers are NATO officers, okay? So listen, there's something in this statement that goes back to why I'm telling you that the West is once again prying, poking, sticking to see the reaction of the Russian Federation, all right? There's something. So listen, let's go back to something in this article. It says, more than a month out from a horrific terrorist attack outside Moscow, officials have made clear that they will not allow civilian life to be threatened on Russian soil. So what just happened yesterday with these strikes, these drone and missile strikes, even though they weren't successful? That doesn't matter. If you allow the empire to do this, it's mission creep. Do you understand? So just allowing that to happen without a tough response in Ukraine, if Russia does not strike decision-making centers in Ukraine to remind them, hey, listen, we know who's behind this, then the escalation will begin again, and it will begin without fear of Russia's nuclear arsenal. And that could be a misdirection or misstep by the West that could cause the whole world to go into a clash, okay? You've got to confront the bully head on, or the bully eats his Wheaties and thinks that it's, whew, I'm puffed up, I can do this. So listen, let's go a little further. And bear with me, because I like for you to get the understanding of the articles, okay? Don't read just to say you've read an article, okay? Don't read just to say, hey, I know that, or I understand it. Read for understanding. If you don't read for understanding, there is no need to read it. Memorization is not understanding, okay? That's why we go into definition, and that's why you may hear me go through an article, and it may take 10, 15, 20 minutes to go through that article, because we'll go back to certain points in the article. Now, remember, this is only the second time I've read this article, okay? And when I read it, I said, you know what? I've got to try to find this, see where I can save this at, so that when I finally go live, we can address something in this article, okay? Shout out to the chat. Let's go further. The Kremlin conveyed this stance Monday amid concerns NATO-aligned countries will escalate their involvement in Ukraine's war against Russia. French President Emmanuel Macron has discussed sending French troops to assist key in battle armed forces, while rumors have spread that the United Kingdom may provide weapons and even technical advisors to enable a Ukrainian attack on the Crimean Bridge. Now, everybody has been fascinated with the Crimean Bridge. And I have not talked much on the Crimean Bridge, because I believe that, yes, they may have had plans to strike the Crimean Bridge, but I don't think that that's their main plan. I think when you're dealing with magicians, remember what I told you, the sleight of the hand. The thing that they tell you that they're most focused on is not the thing that they're most focused on. Right? They are focused on escalation control. That's why this statement that we just read was issued Monday. By Tuesday or Wednesday, what happened? Ukraine was sending drones and missiles across Russia, what is recognized to be Russia's borders, into civilian areas. And what the West is doing is seeing how far they can push this escalation control. You understand? They want you to focus so much on the Crimean Bridge. And while everybody's focused over here, they're preparing and positioning something over here. Remember that when the magician does the trick is not where you're looking. Okay? All right? Remember that when dealing with the news, when dealing with these websites, when dealing with me, when dealing with hold everybody feet to the fire, when dealing with all of these alternative platforms, hold their feet to the fire. And remember that misdirection is how the magician is able to put his trick over. Just like, and I'll come back to this in a minute. Just as Joe Biden has started talking about that they're holding weapons, they're halting weapons shipments to Ukraine. And they're doing this, according to what the news is reporting, because Israel is now enacting a full-scale operation in Rafah, in Gaza. All right. And so in one article I read, they've coined the article in such a way as to say that if it was a limited operation, Joe Biden would continue with the transfer of weapons. Now, here's the kicker right here. Joe Biden hadn't stopped giving them people weapons. Even though Israel is playing the part in the news, and even though Joe Biden is playing the part in the news, that's the sleight of the hand. Remember that prior to the outbreak of hostilities in this region, prior to the assassination of the generals in the IRGC that were in the consulate in the embassy, and prior to Israel targeting southern Syria, remember that the United States announced a big military buildup in occupied Palestine. Remember, they said that they were transferring weapons, radars, and all kind of things to their facilities in so-called, quote-unquote, Israel at military bases. And this would be sufficient in case hostilities break out. All right? Remember that? So Joe Biden on one hand said he stopped giving Israel missiles and weapons. Listen, this man is buying time for them to do what they're doing. Right? Good cop, bad cop. Right? And he's saying, listen, we can help you better covertly. But if our image is tarnished by the world, it's this extra pressure that we don't need. We got to look as though we're finally standing up to you. That we look down between our legs, and we saw that we do have conies. Yeah? So this is what is going on behind the scene. They're trying to push this over on you as if he stopped. They had already built up weapon stockpiles at multiple bases in occupied Palestine or Israel. Google it. And then, while the hostilities started, even before the Iranian retaliatory strike on Israel, guess what happened? America said that they were making double time by stocking up weapons reserves and ammunition reserves in their facilities in Israel. Everybody forgot about that, huh? If you have a big stockpile in occupied Palestine, and if you are sharing those bases with the Zionist regime in Israel, you don't believe that they have access to those weapons, radars, and armaments and ammunition? So Joe Biden can save face and say, we've stopped, we put a halt to the selling or shipping of weaponry and armaments and ammunition to Israel until they comply with X, Y, and Z. This gets them a little pressure off of them internationally, because prior to this, remember, the whole world was condemning them. So on one hand, yeah, we stop. On the other hand, hey, our military attaché in occupied Palestine, let them have whatever they want. Do you actually believe that Israel could have gone into Rafah in the surrounding areas without the assurance of missiles, bombs, bullets, and guns? All you have to do is do a Google search of the size of the Israeli, the IDF forces. And if you believe that, I got a whole bunch of real estate to sell you down the street. I got a whole bunch of it. It's all $1 million property. It's absolutely crazy that people fall for this lunacy. Because we have short memories. We don't examine what is being said to us. We just take what these people give us, hook, line, and sinker. And they put out fillers. They put fillers out because they'll give exclusives to certain people, even in the alt media. And they don't understand that they're being used in certain instances to push a false agenda or a narrative. You understand? So, on the one hand, they say good for the United States that it is refusing to sell any more weapons or arms to Israel. And that's been all over the news, right? And it's been showing you how Israeli parliament members have been acting, right? It's been showing you how the State Department and the White House press have been acting about Joe Biden is not going to do X, Y, and Z. That's because they already had a backup plan. And this would get pressure off of America, so much to say, because look, America is doing what she's doing to help Israel, but she didn't expect this much international blowback and pressure on her, right? So she's saying in the background, Israel, look, both of us are catching it. But if you want me to help you, I got to be able to get some of my creditors off my back. I got to be able to get some of these other people off my back, people that I want to be able to stab in the back later on. I got to befriend them right now. And the best way for me to do it is to step away from this Israeli-U.S. thing or whatever in public. But I'm going to give you everything you need in private. Now, before we go back to the Russian thing, do you remember when I told you about, and I was warning everybody, because you all heard all of the mainstream and alternative media that used to say, Zelensky continues to make all of these military blunders. Zelensky continues to send troops to Bakhmut or Arkianis, right? To the meat grinder, right? And I kept telling you, that's not Zelensky. He's a puppet. It is the puppeteers that are doing this. But America, she's slick. She wants her cake and she wants to eat it too. On the one hand, publicly she says, we need Zelensky to focus his troops over here to do X, Y, and Z. And on the other end, they want us to believe that Zelensky ignored all of their dictates, all of their advice militarily and politically, and continued to send troop after troop, soldier after soldier into the meat grinder without the U.S., the French, the British, and NATO authorities' approval. If you don't stop this lunacy, if I pay the bills, I call the shots. Just imagine if they really wanted Zelensky to focus on a certain area, right? And he did not want to. They have their assassins embedded in the in the Ukrainian government. They have their stooges throughout the Ukrainian government, right? They even have their handler who walks with the Ukrainian president, telling the yes and the no's, the do's and the don'ts. And you're telling me on these platforms that Zelensky has the testicular fortitude and the wherewithal to flaunt U.S. demands. When has he ever done it? When has he ever done it? And even better than that, when has America allowed that to happen? Now look at this situation. Russia's the largest nuclear power in the world. Russia has one of the best fighting forces on planet Earth. Did that stop America from trying to implement her plans of subjugation on Russia, even with the threat of nuclear confrontation in the background? No. Now, Zelensky has no nuclear weapons, no finances outside of what America gives him. The entire government budget depends on the gratuity of the U.S. government. All of the weapons that are sourced to Ukraine now, 90% comes from the U.S. and 10% from other NATO nations, right? The CIA has its own directorate inside of the SBU, which is the Ukrainian Intelligence Bureau or Security Bureau. You have NATO planners and attachés all across Ukraine. And you want me to believe that Zelensky was implementing policies against the empire, and they did nothing to stop it now. They didn't try to remove him, even though they put him in power. They didn't defund him. They didn't try to assassinate him then, right? You want me to believe that? Nah. And I ask anybody, if you're living in that much la-la land, when has America ever allowed that to happen? When she has provided all of the finances, almost all of the weapons, the real-time intelligence, right? And the targeting. Listen, more so than all of that other stuff, and the targeting. So if they were going into Bakhmut or Archaeomis, and they needed targeting information, if America did not want them to double down and triple down and quadruple down into Archaeomis, then why did they keep feeding them targeting information in there? Because you could have nipped that in the bud by the refusal to send targeting information and to redirect the troops to an area which would be to their advantage and that would have U.S. targeting information. I'm not a military man. I'm just a free thinker. And now you want us to believe that America, who allocates money to Israel every year, a so-called sovereign nation, right? Allocates money to Israel every year to the tunes of billions of dollars, then allocates another 10 or 20 billion in military assistance, something that Israel gets these grants and these loans and never has to pay back. And you're telling me that America just cut ties over this? Huh? You cut ties, but you still reinforcing your bases there. You cut ties, but you're building a dock, an illegal dock in Gaza, so that you can control the newly found oil and gas off the coast of Palestine. And you stop. You just stop. You alienated your creation, you and Britain's creation, you and France and Britain's creation in the Middle East, right? And you say, I'm not doing it. I'm not sending them any more weapons. Man, stop this. Stop this. Stop playing with people's intelligence. Stop this. Again, and sometimes when I'm dealing with people, I get, I'm very calm and everything, but I get very angry when people fake ignorance or they insult your intelligence by denying actual facts that are right in their face. That really irks me. And so what I'm saying to you is, when one puts common sense on these things, it's hard to believe America's side. It's hard to believe the NATO side. It's hard to believe the Israeli side, because you have all of these facts staring you in your face. And for you to believe this over here, you would have to, in this instance, get rid of all critical thinking, all history, and all video and audio proof of what's going down, so that you can accept this make-believe over here. Don't let them do you like this. Don't let them talk down to you like this. I mean, we just got to do better. We've got to get out of this lazy stage, and we got to start trying to learn and trying to apply that knowledge that we learn. Okay, we've got to. I want to go back to something real quick because there's something in this article. I think it's this article that I saw that I wanted to bring to your attention. And the reason I'm tongue-tied today is that medicine I took. Sometimes it have me like dry mouth and all of this stuff. That's why I drink so much water. But anyway, listen to this. Let's go a little further. It says, French President Emmanuel Macron has discussed sending French troops to assist Kiev's embattled armed forces, while rumors have spread that the United Kingdom may provide weapons and even technical advisors to enable a Ukrainian attack on the Crimean bridge. Let's go further. Russian officials met with diplomats from both countries, threatening severe consequences. Well, what is that severe consequence? Remember when I told you that when you talk to a person straight up, you look them in their eyes and you tell them, listen, I cannot allow this over here. You sit there and you try to find common points of agreement. But even if you don't agree on other points, you've got to let them know, listen, this is my red line right here. If you do this, I'm going to have to hit you. I cannot do anything but respond to this. You're pushing me in a position where I'm going to be forced to respond. And when I respond, the response will be way harsher than what you initiated. So just, you don't have to agree with me. Just please respect these red lines. Right? So when you talk to a person and you look them in their eyes and you become a man and you grab your cojones, not literally, not physically, but you grab your cojones and you realize that you do have testosterone in you. Regardless of what they're telling you in the schools and what they're telling you through the government, your wife has the estrogen and you have the testosterone. And you go and you say, listen, this is unacceptable. Please don't do this. Now, I understand that you don't see it this way, but listen, to avoid conflict, if you stay away from this issue here, we won't even have to bump over this if you stay away from it. But if you don't stay away from it, this, and this will be the outcome. Is that not what Vladimir Putin sent his ambassadors to do and say? I've been saying that for the longest. And I heard other people, oh, he's too brash. He's too forward. He is too aggressive. No, I'm too real. I'm going to tell you what the real is. Because I'm sick and tired of these men acting sissified. If you're a man, accept your masculinity and be a man. Especially if you are a man ruling over a country, or you're a man that the security of a nation is in your hand. Let those people know what they cannot do. Listen, we don't agree over here, but you cannot do this. Because if you do, this is the outcome. Right? That's common sense. Now, we may not agree, but you know what to stay away from. We can work on the things that we do agree on. Your things over here that you were talking about, I'll stay away from that as much as I can. You stay away from this that we don't agree on as much as that. Because you understand. I understand your red lines. But what I'm trying to get you to understand is mine, because if you cross them, remember, I'm not Iraq. I am not Afghanistan. I'm not Syria. I'm not any of those nations that you wage war or sought to balkanize. I'm not any of those. So if you cross this one here, this vital red line, expect this, and this. And when you deal with a person face to face, eye to eye, and you say what you mean and you mean what you say, if they cross that red line, that is not on you. That is not on you. You are within your right then to react the way you stated. So let's go further. All right. It says, Russian officials met with diplomats from both countries, threatening severe consequences. I can tell you both of them were taken out behind the woodshed and given a huge whoop-ass beating by the Russians, said American filmmaker Regis Tremblay on Sputnik's The Critical Hour program Monday. The documentarian who now resides in Crimea joined host Wilmer Leon and Garland Nixon to discuss this latest development in NATO countries' proxy war against Moscow. Listen what it's a quote here. They were told, listen to me good. Remember what I told you, eye to eye, face to face, and then be very direct. See, for the cameras, you have to be this diplomatic machine. But when you're sitting behind closed doors and you're talking about the security of your nation and the security of the world, sometimes diplomacy has to take a back seat because sometimes people are not understanding the language you're speaking. As long as you can understand my diplomatic speak, there is then no need to resort to the military speak. But when all diplomatic avenues have been exhausted and you show no regard for my national interests and my sovereignty, then I will be forced to resort to a military action. Is that not the common way people act on the streets? When they're talking to a person and they're trying to calm a person down and tell them, listen, I wouldn't do that if I was you. If I were you, I would step away, go do this, go do that. And as you talk to them, they become more and more belligerent. And you're starting to recognize, hey, every time I take a step sideways, they take 2 steps over. Every time I take a step back, they take 2 steps forward. And they become more and more aggressive. So then you plant your feet. And then you tell them, listen, I've been listening to you. You have not heard me. We're almost at the point of exhaustion diplomatically. What comes after diplomacy, if diplomacy fails, is war. That's common sense. That's what everybody does in their life on the street. Why don't they apply that to the governments? Huh? So I would tell them, listen, if you do this, you have exhausted all of our diplomacy. Then I am in a corner where I must back up my words. There's an old statement that we were taught. Have you not heard that your word shall be bond, regardless to whom or what? And you would answer, yes, my word is bond, and bond is life. And I will give my life before my word shall fail. They have to stand on that. You cannot say things with conviction and don't stand on that. Because if you do that with the empire, the next threats that you make towards them will be ignored. Then you put the world in an awkward position, dangling towards all-out war. You know, I'm going in the chat in a minute. Let me read this real quick. Listen. They were told in no uncertain terms that if their missiles, and I'm talking about those Storm Shadow missiles from the UK and France, and the ATACMS from the United States. So now most people focused on the British and the French. Remember, go back and look at all of the videos that were done these last few days after Russia signaled that enough was enough. They often brought up Russia's threats and Russia's ultimatums to Britain and France. It was some left out. Let's reread that part. They were told, who is they? Who is they? Well, we get an answer of who the they were at the end of this quote. They were told in no uncertain terms that if their missiles, there is plural, meaning more than one, right? So now we could have 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 30, right? When concerning the word they or there, right? It's showing ownership. THEIR shows ownership. All right? This is what it says. They were told in no uncertain terms that if their missiles, and I'm talking about, listen what he's going to give you, he's going to let the cat out of the bag with whose missiles he's talking about. And I'm talking about those Storm Shadow missiles from the UK and France. Now look how they conveniently left out this last part. I'm talking about the alternative media, which is the most crucial part. And I'm talking about those Storm Shadow missiles from the UK and France and the ATACMS from the United States. So the threats were not just given out to France and the UK. Russia gave an ultimatum out to the US too. But nobody spoke on it. Huh? They act like they can't read. They were told, meaning a group of people. Who are these group of people? In no uncertain terms, that if their missiles there, which shows the ownership of those missiles, who owns the Storm Shadow? That is a project between the British and the French, right? All right. So that's one type of missile. But it's talking about multiple type of missiles and each belonging to different nations, right? So those Storm Shadow missiles from the UK and France and the ATACMS missiles from the United States, if they are used to attack deep into Russia, and that means Crimea, they will meet with a devastating retaliation. Right there. But nobody mentioned the last part, that they also gave the ultimatum to the empire. It's right there. You see? It's on the article. You can pull it up. It's called A Shot Across the Bow. Moscow will not allow NATO attacks on Russian civilians. Now, let's read something else real quick. Listen to what followed that quote. Was another quote. Okay? And it says, it will be worse than anything they could imagine. And they not only told them that they were not just talking about Ukraine, but beyond, he noted. So what could beyond mean? Well, if he talked about Britain and France, that's in Europe. And if he talked about the U.S., even though she has bases in Europe, he says, and beyond. What's beyond Europe? To the west. The United States, right? Right? I'm reading it. It's right here. So Putin had to walk them to that area that they may not agree on. And he may say, listen, it's fine that you don't agree on this, but understand from our perspective, it doesn't need your agreement. We're just telling you from our point of view that if this takes place, recognize that this, and this will take place, and it will not just be exclusively to Russian territory or to Ukrainian territory. Haven't I been telling you this? That they had to make sure that they let the West know, listen, if you keep on, this will not just be in Ukraine. Because you are in Ukraine feeding intelligence on a 24-hour basis, day and night. You're directing arms and strikes into Russian territory and former Ukrainian territory. You have special operation guys on the ground as mercenaries. You continue to have an influx of Western weapons and radars come in. And if you would just back up, we could end this war. So it shows me you are trying to weaken me. So if you continue with these hostilities in this manner, they will no longer be confined to this area. You too will feel it. Haven't I been telling you all that? I'm asking. Haven't I been telling you that you have to talk to the empire like that? You cannot just allow them to run roughshod over everything. And I am not an advocate of war. But listen to me, when you're a realist, sometimes you have to let the aggressor understand that if this continues in this manner, these are the only possible outcomes. Now, you don't have to adhere to self-restraint. But know that if you do not restrain yourselves, I will take the liberty to do so. And when I do it, it will not be voluntary. You understand? Tell a person what you mean and mean what you tell that person. You understand? So listen, let's go a little further. It says, Those were the exact words that were used in the Russian media today. I think this is a very definite shot across the bow. A very definite shot across the bow. Finally, they said finally, by Russia to issue a warning to the United States. Remember I told you it was 3. The UK and France. And then he says, and anybody else who's thinking of using these kind of weapons in the Russian Federation. So my thing to you is, why was all the talk about the threats to France and the UK? And why nobody mentioned that this was not exclusive to France and the UK, but it was spoken directly to France, the UK, and the US, and anyone else who may want to participate in these reckless acts of aggression, but specifically and especially the US, the UK, France. But our Western media and most alt media focused on the UK and US and the French, and omitted the seriousness of what Russia tried to convey to the world's other superpower, the United States. I'm telling you, some of them read these articles, they just did not read that. Why? Okay. So it says, it goes on and talks about how Russia is not afraid to fight and all of this stuff. Once you convey your position, then you got to act. Now, you said that these things would not be used to strike Russia, deep in Russian territory. Well, what about the periphery? Right? What about right at the edge in Belgorod and all of that stuff? Because Ukraine attempted this, Russia, I would launch a mass, and I'm saying hypothetically, YouTube, hypothetically, Rumble, hypothetically, Odyssey. I would launch a massive attack at government centers. Not the main government, but to show them, now, you go after citizens, we go after your learned ones, your politicians. Citizens are off limits. If you escalate again, our response will be deadly, and I mean on every level. Mean what you say what you mean. And now I see that they say, finally, Russia is responding. I've been telling you, listen, this is what needs to be done right here, and here. Because if you do this, and this, it's a better chance that it does not escalate into all-out conflict. Because they might misrepresent and miscalculate something and say, oh, he might not respond to this. But if I tell them straight up, listen, I will immediately respond to this. I'm going to respond to this. I'm going to do this, and this. Okay, if you ignore that and you continue on and I hit you with that response, then you'll know, okay, he hit me with that response. Now, if I retaliate, he already told me what would be the response for that. So then they get an understanding that, okay, man, we got to bring this back into the realm of Ukraine, because now we're venturing off into a place that may come back and boomerang us and hit us. That's how you have to make them think. You cannot allow a bully a free hand. That's not how things work. That's not how you can be successful. You know, shout out to everybody in the chat. Let me see. Pedro is in the building. Joel is in the building. Ned Rando is in the building. Truth hurts. Facts, 100%. You better believe it. Let's see. I'm gonna put you up there in a second. Ping One is in the building. Let's see. Cheese Puff is in the building. Let's see. Sincere Sentinel of Sapiens and Sapiens. That's a hard one to say, especially when your mouth is dry. Shout out to you for coming to the show also. Let me see something. Let's go to something. Net says, good afternoon, Rashid. Still morning on the West Coast, Canada. Shout out to you, man. I hope everything is going well with you, all right? Truth Hurt says 100% facts. And this is what I'm saying. Why won't these people speak about this? And listen, I know that every time they read an article, these people are not overlooking this stuff or like not understanding what is in there. So if you do it once, okay, that's something. You do it twice, maybe. Even if you may do it 3 times, you might say, "Oh, okay, that's a person slipping back into their habit." But if 5 or 10 times out of 10 you omit something that is very crucial to the discussion, or you leave out crucial facts of the discussion, then you can be looked at as a participant on the side of the aggressor. You understand? So when these facts fall, even if they don't fall in your favor, you got to put them out there. All right, let's see what Truth Hurt says. Putin is back in a corner. He can't back down and let nukes on his doorstep. U.S. seen what we did when Russia put them in Cuba. What we are doing is like Russia put nukes in Mexico. That would never happen. See, what I'm saying is, right. That's what I elaborated on a lot of topics in so many words. All right. We had the video where Biden is meeting leaders of some former Soviet republics, which is a spit in the eye to Russia as we speak. Meeting them as Russia is fighting a U.S.-led and initiated war in Ukraine. And he's meeting them 100 kilometers from Russia's border. And I think it was 100 kilometers. It could have been 100 miles. Say, for instance, if it was 100 miles, that's still a shorter distance than Cuba to Florida. And we almost went to nuclear war because Russia had missiles in Cuba. And America sees no problem with putting bases and having meetings in former Soviet Republic space, antagonizing Russia, while Russia is fighting a proxy war that America has put on it. Is that not provocation in the highest level? Huh? I mean, it is. So let's go further. Penny one says, "Peace, Rashid." And he also says this: Biden is a crafty charlatan. You better believe that. You better believe it. Matter of fact, since we're on Biden, let's see. Since we're on Biden, let me go to my clips real quick. I erased some clips about Biden up there, but I want you to listen to this real quick. All right, this is about a minute, and then somebody put this video up, right? And we're using this to fact. Matter of fact, before I use anything, let me put up the disclaimer because I don't want any problems from these people, man. YouTube, y'all already beat me down with subscribers and everything else, so I don't want anything else to block us. Where is that? All right, here we go, right here. Copyright disclaimer. 15 seconds. Everybody, this is just to save my behind from copyright infringement and YouTube. Okay. I want to play some things for you since being one brought up Biden. I want to play a few things for you. So we're going to play something. Somebody did a little thing on Biden from 1974. All right. And it's only a minute or something. I want you to listen to this. Where is it at? On my dashboard. All right, here we are right here. I want you to pay close attention to this right here.
What we hope we can do is to amend the law so that there will be a guarantee that people will have access to funds so they can run if they have enough support to merit it. And then to put a limit on how much any one individual can give so nobody can purchase through wealth an undue share in the decision-making process. To start the testimony for the evening, I call Senator Biden of Delaware.
Here we go.
Senator Biden, welcome to the Advocates.
Thank you. Good to be here. Senator Biden, it's nice to have you here. As the youngest member of the Senate, the one, therefore, who may expect the longest career there, I wonder if you'd say to us, since it's clear that you're not corrupt and you got elected.
I highly doubt that.
Since it's clear that you're not corrupt and you got elected.
Why should people think that the system produces corrupt results when there you are?
Well, I'm not sure you should assume I'm not corrupt, but thank you for that, though. The system does produce corruption, and I think implicit in the system is corruption, when in fact whether or not you can run for public office, and it costs a great deal of money to run for the United States Senate, even from a small state like Delaware, you have to go to those people who have money, and they always want something.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
Well, I'm not sure you should assume I'm not corrupt, but thank you for that, though.
You're a chump. You're a chump.
Listen, this man says that the system is corrupt, right? And he told the guy, "Hey, I don't think you should assume that I'm not corrupt." He was, he was telling you from the jump that this man is figured to the core, right? So, man, that thing right there is something else, right? That clip there. Do you mind if I play that one more time? Let me play that one more time before I play these other clips. This guy is something else. Just listen. It's only a minute, so just pay attention.
What we hope we can do is to amend the law so that there will be a guarantee that people will have access to funds so they can run if they have enough support to merit it. And then to put a limit on how much any one individual can give so nobody can purchase through wealth an undue share in the decision-making process. To start the testimony for the evening, I call Senator Biden of Delaware.
Here we go.
Senator Biden, welcome to the Advocates.
Thank you. Good to be here. Senator Biden, it's nice to have you here. As the youngest member of the Senate, the one, therefore, who may expect the longest career there, I wonder if you'd say to us, since it's clear that you're not corrupt and you got elected.
I highly doubt that.
Since it's clear that you're not corrupt and you got elected.
Why should people think that the system produces corrupt results when there you are?
Well, I'm not sure you should assume I'm not corrupt, but thank you for that, though. The system does produce corruption, and I think implicit in the system is corruption, when in fact, whether or not you can run for public office, and it costs a great deal of money to run for the United States Senate, even from a small state like Delaware, you have to go to those people who have money, and they always want something.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
Well, I'm not sure you should assume I'm not corrupt, but thank you for that, though.
You're a chump. You're a chump.
All right, let me play something else. And I am putting your some of your comments up on the screen as time allows. Okay, so the word corruption, according to the Google's dictionary, the word corruption is a noun. It means dishonest or fraudulent, right? It says dishonest or fraudulent conduct by those in power, typically involving bribery. Oops, whoa, say that again. Typically involving bribery. Okay, let's go to something real quick. All right. Let's look at this corruption, and you'll get an understanding of what or why Joe Biden is so dedicated to this war in Ukraine. Okay, I want you to listen to this real quick. All right, let's see which one I'll play. I'll play the one with the ambassador first. Okay.
The former top Ukrainian prosecutor who got fired, he came out swinging against Biden, the Bidens, Hunter and Joe Biden. And that was in an exclusive interview with Brian Kilmeade on Saturday night. And Alexandria Hoff is standing by. Basically, this racket apparently netted the Bidens more than $17 million. Is that right, Alex?
Yeah, there were a lot of accusations that were thrown out as part of this interview from the former top prosecutor in Ukraine. What's interesting is for all of the drama that has taken place for the past couple of years when it comes to President Biden, who was then vice president at the time, and Viktor Shokin, what stood out to me was how popular Viktor Shokin seemed to be at certain points during the Obama administration. Among other officials, the State Department on several occasions had praised his efforts to combat corruption in Ukraine. But by 2015, then Vice President Biden made it clear that it was Shokin who was corrupt and that he must be removed from his position. So by March of 2016, Viktor Shokin was fired as Ukraine's top prosecutor. That was just 1 year after being appointed, actually. So that came after Vice President Biden. He threatened to withhold $1 billion in aid from Ukraine's then President Petro Poroshenko. He discussed this very transaction back in 2018. Watch this.
I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him.
All right, well, Ukraine did get that $1 billion because Shokin was ousted. So in an interview, it's exclusive with Brian Kilmeade, Shokin said that he was not fired for corruption, but because he was overseeing an investigation into Burisma, the Ukrainian national gas company where Hunter Biden served on its board.
Complaints whatsoever, no problems with how I was performing at my job. I developed a very firm understanding of the fact that the vice president was only acting in his own interests. He, generally speaking, handled Ukraine like it was his own backyard.
So in the interview, Shokin did not provide evidence of his claim that the Biden family accepted bribes. In a statement to Fox News, the White House called Shokin, quote, a former Ukrainian prosecutor general whose office his own deputy called a hotbed of corruption, drawing demands for reform not only from then Vice President Biden, but also from U.S. diplomats, international partners, and Republican senators like Ron Johnson. The White House added that Shokin's office was not investigating Burisma at the time he was fired. Shokin says that he was, and that it was on a list of cases that needed special attention due to a board member being the vice president's son. I'll send it back to you.
Alex Hoff, thank you so much.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here.
Now, when we look at Burisma, you know that Hunter Biden was on the board. They were getting contracts. They were trying to get the fertile land, all the farmland. U.S. companies were in there trying to get all of that farmland, that black earth. They were trying to get control of the coal mines. There were studies done on the Crimean Peninsula and in the Black Sea when that area was considered, without dispute, Ukrainian area. You know, they found huge supplies of oil and gas, right? And so Biden and Joe Biden and his son Hunter, they were doing kickbacks. Why do you think that scandal took place not too long ago about that cryptocurrency? They were feeding money in and out, and they were whitewashing the money. And they found evidence of Hunter Biden being involved. And we know about the little audio where Hunter says we got to give 10% to the big man, right? And you tell him, Joe told you he was corrupt. When the guy said, you're not corrupt, he said, I don't think you should say I'm not corrupt. He didn't lie about that. He lies about a lot of things. But in 1974, on that interview, he told the truth, right? So again, but let me play another little short clip. So just give me a little bit of your time.
And you testified that in this particular practice Q&A with the Obama State Department, it wasn't just generally about Burisma and corruption, it was specifically about Hunter Biden and Burisma. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And the exact quote from your testimony, Ambassador, is, quote, the way the question was phrased in this model Q&A was, what can you tell us about Hunter Biden's, being named to the board of Burisma? So for the millions of Americans watching, President Obama's own State Department was so concerned about potential conflicts of interest from Hunter Biden's role at Burisma that they raised it themselves while prepping this wonderful ambassador nominee before her confirmation. And yet our Democratic colleagues and the chairman of this committee cry foul when we dare ask that same question that the Obama State Department was so concerned about. But we will continue asking it. And lastly, in my 20 seconds left, I just want to get it on record. In terms of defensive lethal aid, which you were an advocate for, that was not provided by President Obama. It was provided by President Trump.
That's correct.
You see that? The cat was let out the bag in two instances here, right? Boom. See, I told you, I'm an equal opportunist. I select Biden and I select Trump. I'll select anybody. It doesn't matter. We're going to get to the truth. So, we know about the corruption in the Burisma, but here's the thing that puts to bed all of these I call childhood ideologies of Trump's innocence and everything. I'm not talking about his corruption cases and all that stuff. I'm talking about vis-a-vis Ukraine. All right. There's something that was said at the end of this interview. Well, I wouldn't say interview, but this grilling. That is very, very important for those of you who said that Trump never started any wars. Okay? Remember, this is a congressional hearing here. All right? And I'm going to play that again. And I want you to listen to the last two things that the Congresswoman brings up. Pay close attention, especially and specifically about Trump and Ukraine. Okay, remember, because everybody says Trump could stop the fighting in Ukraine, and Trump says this would have never happened had I been president, right? Okay, let's just do what they say here in this congressional hearing. All right.
And you testified that in this particular practice Q&A with the Obama State Department, it wasn't just generally about Burisma and corruption, it was specifically about Hunter Biden and Burisma. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And the exact quote from your testimony, Ambassador, is, quote, the way the question was phrased in this model Q&A was, what can you tell us about Hunter Biden's, being named to the board of Burisma? So for the millions of Americans watching, President Obama's own State Department was so concerned about potential conflicts of interest from Hunter Biden's role at Burisma that they raised it themselves while prepping this wonderful ambassador nominee before her confirmation. And yet our Democratic colleagues and the chairman of this committee cry foul when we dare ask that same question that the Obama State Department was so concerned about. But we will continue asking it. And lastly, in my 20 seconds left, I just want to get it on record. In terms of defensive lethal aid, which you were an advocate for, that was not provided by President Obama. It was provided by President Trump.
That's correct.
So that comes from a Republican. So everybody needs to stop this. That Trump would have stopped the Ukrainian conflict. Trump would have not have escalated. Trump would not have poured weapons in there. He was the one who poured the weapons in. Understand? So I told you, I don't care if it's Biden, Trump, Obama, I'm going to shellac them if they're lying to the people. Okay? So, look at that. All of the illusions, we cut through. What did they say? She said, I wanted this to have on record. The lethal aid was not started by Obama. All right? Because the woman she was talking to was an ambassador, and she was for the lethal aid to go to Ukraine. And they said that was done by Trump. There's that public facade now crashing. Because now we see that this war was made possible through the help of not just Barack Obama, not just this lunatic Joe Biden, but also your boy, the so-called independent thinker, the so-called independent-minded Donald Trump. Isn't that something? Huh? I'm telling you, you're going to learn something every time you come to this platform. Matter of fact, everybody hit the like button, please. Please. Because, we have to deal with the algorithm and the suppression of views and the unsubscribe, how they unsubscribe my subscribers. Hit the like button. Make sure you share this. We're not off the air yet, though. All right? We're going to go to something else. We're going to go to this other part. And I believe this one here is, they showed a glimpse of it on one of the videos, but I want you to listen to it. It's only a minute and 24 seconds, so pay close attention.
That is, I'm desperately concerned about the backsliding on the part of Kyiv in terms of corruption. They made, I'll give you one concrete example. I was, not but it just happened to be, that was the assignment I got. I got all the good ones. So I got Ukraine. And I remember going over, convincing our team, or others too, convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I'm not going to, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time. Well, there's still so they made some.
See the corruption of this man. I want you to think about this. What we hear America constantly talking about Chinese meddling in the U.S. domestic politics and Chinese meddling into the U.S. election. They don't scream about how the U.S. openly states in their policy how they try to shape and mold policy around the world, right? And that's involvement in these people culture. You're trying to mold their culture. You're trying to mold their politics, their policies, their governments, all of this. That's okay. But then you say Russia, election interference. China, election interference, right? That's what you say. Now I want you to look at this. Why nobody screamed about Joe Biden openly stating that he had the prosecutor of a so-called sovereign nation removed because he was investigating the company that his son was on the board of? Huh? Why? Isn't that violating somebody's territorial integrity and sovereignty? Huh? And then you do it and say that if you don't fire him, so you left no options. If you don't fire him, we won't give you that money that you need so desperately. Now here's the kicker. We know Ukraine is corrupt, right? But the United States was feeding money into Ukraine, and when they got them addicted to the money, they threatened to turn off the dope. And now you have a fiending addict over here that needs an injection, an economic injection into the arm. And you leave them with no options. You're saying, listen, if you don't fire him, I know that's your sovereign affairs, but if you don't fire him and put somebody who is more liked by us and who's willing to evaluate things through our national security interests and needs, then you won't get this $1 billion loan and you will go financially belly up. You sneak inject the person with more with heroin, right? They don't know they're being injected. Now they're feeling this high that they've never felt before, right? And you're feeding them little bits of it every time. And then now you go back to them and say, hey, you know that heroin, I've been feeding you that economic heroin that you've been getting high off. It comes at a price. You got to do this, and this. You got to overlook your own nation's will, your own nation's justice system, your own nation's governance, and you have to comply with our will and dictates. If you don't look for another shot of that heroin. And now that junkie is fiending, that junkie is starting to get a little animated and twitching and all of this stuff because the back of the addict's mind is, I need that $1 billion injection because I had plans to do this, and this. So then guess what you do? Everybody knows that someone who is an addict will compromise principles for the sake of the drug. And that's what we had with Joe Biden providing the dope, ran up on the people under Obama, and they shot or injected heroin into Ukraine, trying to steal it out of Russia's sphere of influence. And then they promoted the ones who were most affected by the drug to the halls of power. And then once they get up there and they're fiending and the government is twitching, they say, we'll deny you the dope that you need to get high if you don't do this. That sounds like a drug dealer and a drug addict, right? You are leveraging your position as the dope man against the addict that you know has little power to resist that enticement of that the heroin that you gave them. You made them become addicts, then you threaten them that you will not give them their fix. Of course, what else do you expect them to do? Huh? And we see the erratic behavior of the addict on the battlefield right now. We see the erratic behavior from the dope man on the battlefield right now. No coherent strategy, no sound judgment, no forward-looking strategist. It's only I have to preserve hegemony at all costs. What did the guy say about NATO? Let me just 51 seconds. I want you to listen to what he has to say about what NATO is doing in Ukraine.
With a special military operation underway for 2 years now, the presidential elections were held according to the constitution. Everything was objective, democratic and fair. The voters have made their choice, voted for Vladimir Putin. The NATO bloc led by the United States is trying to escalate everything, or in other words, it is trying to economically and physically exhaust Russia. It's useless. But all these young Europeans, not the children but the grandchildren of those who suffered defeats on the battlefields before, need to understand once and for all. Any other people would never have managed such a huge territory that our ancestors left us. Only the multinational Russian people are capable of doing this. Therefore, all these problems will certainly be solved. Victory will be on all fronts.
So now, he says the NATO organization is trying to escalate everything. According to the dictionary, the word escalate is a verb. It means increase rapidly. So they're trying to increase pressure and tensions rapidly, right? It says soar, rocket, grow, develop, mushroom. That's what we see with the policies of America. They're trying to put pressure on Iran, on Venezuela, on the Sahel nations in Africa, right? They're trying to put pressure on their puppets in the Middle East. They're trying to put pressure on the Asian nations against China and Russia. That's what they're doing. Do you not know that the plan to collapse the North Korean government is a plan that America wants, because she feels that if she can collapse the North Korean government, all of that untapped rare earths and gold and all would be in the hands of the U.S., which could then extend the life of the dollar, which also extends the life of empire. And also with the collapse of the North Korean government, this is what America gets tenfold in her policy. You have a client state in the South that takes over the North. That means the United States will push military bases right up to Russia's borders, right up to China's borders on that side. They already have them in the Caucasus. They already have them down there in Central Asia. They're already in the Middle East. They already have bases in Asia. And now they want one on the eastern flank of Russia and China. If they have that, they believe that that could be the kill switch to break up Russia, to cause havoc and instability in China, and eventually win this geopolitical game that they're playing. You understand? I don't understand why my screen is frozen. I don't understand that. Hold on 1 second. Hold on. I don't know what they're doing here. Add back to the screen. All right. Let's see. What is going on? All right. Come on, bro. If you guys can hear me, somebody write something in the comments, because I can't see my screen. Here we go with this foolishness again. Somebody write something in the comments so that I can continue along this line of talk. I don't want it to be wasted talk, okay? Let's see. Camera phone. Okay, thank you, Random. It's not me. I have good reception. My son is just pointing out to me that the camera is working good. So it's not me. It's not my internet. Again, I can tell you, I have the fastest internet. I already had Cox Cable to check it before we went live, to send one of those, when they send something through the lines to make sure that everything is working properly. And I have a backup internet thing. So it's not the internet. Okay? It's not the internet. So we're going to keep going. They're frustrated because I'm telling you the truth. Okay? So, and it's not important that you see me. What's important is that you hear me. That's the whole thing. So I'm glad you guys are still there. They're freezing my screen. I don't even have a picture up in my dashboard of me. Okay? So again, we're gonna push through this. They're not gonna frustrate us. So listen, most people don't understand that North Korea borders both China and Russia. They have borders to both those nations. To collapse the North Korean government would mean that America would have a windfall of strategic power. To have China and Russia completely circled. You know that? That's why you see America constantly provoking North Korea. It's because of that. They want to put strain on the economy of North Korea. That's why they tried to fandangle all of these nations for years to go along with sanctions so that they can bankrupt the North Korean government and then cause the people to rise up against the North Korean government in hopes that they choose a Western center of power or Western way of governance so that America could then send in her NGOs and her so-called aid groups so that they can find the most disaffected portion of that population and then stroke their egos and give them money and then use them in the ultimate setting up of a unified Korean government under the U.S. control. That's pretty much what they're trying to do. You know, that's what they're trying to do. Will they be successful? I think not. I don't think so. Because we're looking at the last vestige of American power. Now, we heard what the person said in there, that America wants to escalate. He also said that America and NATO are trying to exhaust the Russian Federation. There's a definition for that word, exhaust. The word exhaust is a verb also. It means drain someone of their physical or mental resources. Tired out. Okay. It says tire out, wear out, overtire, use up, run through, go through. That's what it says. So what we see is this full court geopolitical press that the empire is using. Why? Because they fear both China and Russia. They fear Iran. They fear all of these nations that are questioning dollar hegemony and U.S. supremacy. And they believe that they have a short period of time to confront each and every one of those nations so that they are on borrowed time to extend the life of the dollar. And without the life of the dollar, central in economics, the imperial militaristic arm of the empire dies. And without an enforcer of U.S. policies militarily, America then could not threaten the nations and force them into subjugation to her will. This is a case of them moving to try to force everybody to the dictates of America. You know, they let a cat out the bag. And I put, hey, if you're in the chat and you can still hear me, put up another comment, please. Because I'm going to keep going for a few minutes. If you're still in, I see now my chat is going, my clock is going, but my other clock, my timer is off, and I don't see me on the screen. All right. I don't see that. So if you hear me, please put something in the chat real quick. Okay. So that I can continue on because it's something I want to share with you all real quick. All right. I don't want to just be wasting time. Okay. All right. Here we go. Right here. All right. Here we go. This article is from the 5th. Okay. It's from the 5th of this month. And they let the cat out the bag again. See, I'm telling you, the hubris and the arrogance of these officials, of the American populace and public, of the Western world has no limit. Okay. I appreciate that, Cheese Puff. Appreciate that, Ping One. Appreciate that, Random. Let me tell you, they have no ends. So listen to this. This article is titled, U.S. will send aid to Ukraine. Listen to this part right here. Until start of conflict with China. Former U.S. Congressman. You heard that? I'm going to say that again. Remember how the West says they want to get along with China. Remember how the West says that there's no threat to Russia or China, that they don't want war, that they're seeking peace. The head of this article is titled, U.S. will send aid to Ukraine until start of conflict with China. So they have already put it in their mind that conflict is inevitable with China. Why? Because China, again, I have to tell you this, is a non-white, non-Western nation, and it does not conform to the dictates of either the United States or the Western world. And it refuses to bow to the will of the West. They want democracy. They don't care what the Chinese want. They want the Chinese to be a democracy. The Chinese took some tenets of so-called democracy and mixed it with communism and mixed it with their ideology and came up with a system that is beating the brakes off the Western world. It has the largest economy, purchasing power parity, largest investor, has 5 of the largest banks in the world, the largest trade partner with practically everybody on earth. It has a net of close to $4 trillion in currency reserves, with 1.2 to 1.5 or whatever said to be in U.S. treasuries. It has a shipbuilding capacity, not including ships for companies, but it has a shipbuilding capacity, a military component that is over 200 times greater than the United States and its European partners. 200. This is not what I said. This, you can go back to one of my old shows. I pulled up the U.S. Defense Department statement on it. China has over a 200-time building capacity over the United States. It has the largest army in the world. It now has the largest navy in the world. And next year, at the end of next year, according to most reports, it will then have the largest air force in the world. You see, time is against America's hegemony. You see the empire trying her best to maintain her sway. That's why the head of this article is titled, U.S. will send aid to Ukraine until start of conflict with China, former congressman. Now it goes and says this. The United States will continue to send aid to Ukraine until it can start a conflict with China instead, former U.S. Congressman Ron Paul said on Monday. The U.S. weapons industry and its cheerleaders in Washington, D.C. are determined to keep Ukraine's money flowing until they can figure out a way to go up in a war with China after losing the current war with Russia, Paul said in a column for the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. U.S. elites have no intention of ending aid to Ukraine, which transfers wealth from the working and middle classes to the rich and well-connected, Paul said. Most of the U.S. assistance is actually going towards restoring U.S. stockpiles. Now, I'm going to tell you, remember I told you America is the magician and she's the sleight of hand. She gets all this propaganda about aid in Ukraine. We need to pass this $61 billion aid package. And in reality, Ukraine will be, after the United States pushed it into an unwinnable war against Russia and losing a huge portion of its population in war. And then another huge portion of their population fled. The U.S. then, this is a friend, this is the kind of friend America is, right? This is why I warn those people who are in an alliance with America and who loves to have America's back. They better watch themselves. Listen. After doing all of that and causing the balkanization of Ukraine as a state, as a viable state, the United States then hooks these illegitimate authorities in Kiev. They bribe them and hook them with this deal where some of them will get maybe a couple $1 million or a couple $100 million out of this. And then 50 billion of it goes back to U.S. arms makers. But guess what? The Ukrainian people are on the hook for it. Because this was passed and it was signed, right? And then the Ukrainians accepted it. So America is not only helping to balkanize, helping to exterminate, and helping to destroy every level of governance in Ukraine and level of independence and anything that points toward Ukraine being a viable independent entity. They then quadruple down on this failed policy and exploit the ones that they are already exploiting life and blood and resources in war. They are now exploiting them by forcing them to accept this assistance, which is not even going to Ukraine, but is going to Western weapons makers. And Ukraine will be on the hook for it. That's the kind of friend America is. That's the kind of friend she is. With friends like that, tell me this. Who needs enemies? On that note, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining me on the most powerful platform for truth, bar none, anywhere on God's green earth. This is your platform for education, elevation, and edification. This is the Red Pill Diaries, and I'm your host, brother, and friend, Rashid. And let me say this as we go out. The proof is in the pudding. You see how they try to sabotage the show every time. But we will continue to strive. We will make great gains in truth. You know, truth is almost like a rock falling off a mountain. You know, in the distance, it makes little noise, right? And from your perception and from your view, it looks small and insignificant. But as it rolls down that mountain and it builds up debris on it, that rock becomes bigger and bigger, and it's almost like a boulder. And when it finally crashes down, it smashes anything in its way, right? We're going to smash anything that is trying to stop us from progressing spiritually and mentally and physically. We're going to take this journey of truth. We're going to walk it together. And if you need some spiritual New Balance, come holler at your brother. We can run this thing, all right, in the name of God. On that note, know that I love each and every one of you if you love truth. But know that the true and living God, he will always love you better. And until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody. Thank you.